Okay, so thank you, Kirsten, for your help of launching our webinar. Welcome to everybody. My name is Andrea Telegdi. I represent AIMS International Romania. And I would like to start with two figures that say more about our work culture than any analysis or salary benchmark. First, men ask for pay raises 3 times more often than women. Second, when reading a job description, men apply if they fit 60% of the criteria. Women, well, they drop out if they don't fit 1% of the criteria, or if they feel they don't fit 1%. In other words, it looks like he reads an ad and says, I think I can handle it. She reads an ad and she says, I'd better take another training. Imagine this scene. They are both reading the same ad. We are looking for a strategic, empathetic, results-oriented leader with excellent communication skills. He says, strategic. I've won a chess game last month. Empathetic. Yes, I took the garbage without being asked. I'm definitely the right person. She says, I haven't read a book on leadership in 2 months. I'd better leave it to somebody else. And lo and behold, he applies. She is waiting for the right moment. He asks for a raise because, and she is waiting for her effort to be noticed. And in a few years, he earns more, not necessarily because he is more competent, but because he was braver or maybe just more relaxed. And we, the HR and management community, end up looking at the pay gap and ask ourselves, where does the inequality start? Well, it often starts here, in the way we evaluate ourselves, in the way we ask, in the way we apply or hesitate in applying. And if until now these differences were only a topic of conversation between specialists, soon they will also be a topic of legal compliance. The Pay Transparency Directive will require every organization to explain why people are paid differently, not just how much they are paid. So today, we'd like to talk about how we can build together pay systems that not only respect the law, but also encourage fairness. Because behind every salary grid, there is a story of trust, courage, and perception. Thanks again for joining us. Today we will discuss about how organizations can handle the implementation of the Pay Transparency Directive. And our agenda will be presented shortly, but first of all, let me introduce the team that is behind the concept that we are going to present to you. As I mentioned before, I'm Andrea Telegdi. I represent AIMS Romania, and I'm with the organization for more than 25 years, and I'm not going to be very specific because if I'm going into details, the math will not do me right. Let's just say that I've been involved in almost all the types of projects that our Romanian organization is conducting, from HR audits, organizational culture assessments, leadership evaluation and competency development, and I'm an accredited consultant in using various psychological metrics, and I'm designing and delivering both leadership, communication trainings, and effectiveness workshops. And in the last years, I've conducted numerous job evaluation projects for various types of organizations, and I'm going to go into details about that. Dénes, please take over.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dénes Simonyi. I'm representing AIMS International Hungary, and I've been working on enterprise transformation programs for the past 15 years. And as such, I believe pay transparency also requires enterprises, small and medium businesses to transform to comply with the initiative.
And hello everyone. I'm Balázs Budaházi from Hungary as well. I have 8 years of management consulting, and I'm focusing on usually organizational development, performance improvement, and other HR-related topics. I think that pay transparency will change a company in many ways, and I'm focusing on that.
Okay, so about our agenda. What we will cover today is first, I want to show you some data about pay and representation gaps. Then we will try to help you understand the European Union pay transparency regulation. We will cover implementation considerations. Then we will discuss about how AIMS delivers a complete transparency framework. And of course, what to do next? How do we get started? I've mentioned that the purpose of our webinar is to better understand what pay transparency means for your organization. We will clarify the requirements of the directive and why they matter to each business. We will translate the regulatory requirements, which somehow, if you are not a lawyer or very familiar with this type of language, might feel impractical, but we will translate them into practical company level actions. We will present proven approaches to achieve compliance efficiently and sustainably, and not only to achieve compliance, but approaches that will help your organization be more effective, no matter how the directive looks like. And we will outline the next steps to help you prepare ahead of national implementation and the deadlines that come with that national implementation. Now, I mentioned that pay discrepancy starts actually with representation, with gender representation gaps. And I don't want you to take my word for it. I would like to show you some data. The source is the AIMS salary map, and the last report was issued in July 2025. And what you see here are 3 industries that are well represented in AIMS salary map. The industrial production, a total of almost 180,000 employees have been covered. Salaries have been actually analyzed. The IT sector, software and hardware development, and additional services with a total of almost 330,000 employees. And the professional services, BPOs, call centers, shared services with almost 1,200 employees. As you can see, we have in the industrial production, almost half of the employees, males and females. There is no difference in representation, but the pay gap, at least for Romania, is significant, 27.7%. We move to IT. we have 35% of the workforce represented by females, because this is a STEM industry where most of the graduates of universities and the employees are male, and that's the reason why we have 65% of the employees males. The pay gap is a little smaller than in industrial production, but still more above, high above the guidelines of the European Union, which states 5% gap, 70%. In professional services, the vast majority of employees are females, 75%, 25% are males, and still males are better paid in a female-dominated industry, 8.5% pay gap. But what's interesting is the next slide. This is an extract from the production. As you might know, in production at the blue-collar level, at workshop level, the promotions to the immediate next career level, namely supervisors or team leaders, is done from the direct operators. And despite the fact that the almost 60% of the blue collars are females, when we move to the next logical career step, the supervisor level, only 45% of the holders of these positions are females. So almost 15% are lost just due to the fact that the promotion is not done in the same percentage of representation as in for the blue collars direct operators, and the pay gap increases. Well, you might say, okay, but for blue collars, maybe not everybody wants a higher position. Workers are not interested in supervisory positions. And this might be true. It might be also a lack of interest from the blue collars to go upside the career path. But the situation is similar with white collars. In specialists, at the specialist level, we have 46% represented by females and 54% males, with a pay gap of almost 14%. The next career path, if you don't want to take a leadership position, is in seniority, technical specialization. And what we can see is that at the expert level, which is the highest level of technical expertise, only 32% of the employees are females, and the pay gap indeed is smaller, but the representation gap is much higher. And as you will see now, in the IT sector, the situation is very similar. If we take the career path of specialists in the IT sector, where we have 6 levels actually of seniority, from junior to advanced junior, mid-level, senior, lead, and software architect, despite the fact that the representation at junior level is 38%, with a healthy pay gap, females being better paid than males, when we go to software architect, we only have 14% of the population represented by females, with a 6% pay gap, which is almost in line with the directive. I wanted to present you this data just to emphasize the fact that the directive comes not only because there is a pay gap, but because there is also a representation gap. And you cannot treat the pay gap if you don't address the representation gap. And that's why change not only in processes, but also a change in a mindset is important. But let's see what that what the directive really means and what this change actually supposes in terms of practical things to be done. Dénes, please.
Thank you, Andrea, for the information. Very, very interesting. And before we go into how we think you should tackle pay transparency, we want to give you a brief understanding of what the regulation really covers. So what's the background? As Andrea explained, there is a significant pay gap, which the regulator also recognized, and they believe that it is crucial that we ensure that equal pay is provided for equal work, that pay transparency is increased within the companies and across the industries, and also that clear criteria is provided how an individual can progress in their work. Basically, the Transparency Act will come into force June this year, which means that the first reporting will need to be done next year, summer, so in July. But what will need to be reported and by which company? So there are rumors swirling. If you listen to the radio or look up some forums, you might find some misleading information. But what's important is that the regulation is splitting the companies into four different sizes. The big companies that will need to do annual reporting starting 27 June. There are 250 plus employees. The companies that have 150 to 249 employees will only need to report every 3 years, and smaller companies, the below 100 employee companies, will only need to report voluntarily. And for the 100 to 150 employee-sized companies, they will need to start reporting in 2031. But what this table doesn't show you is that if big companies start reporting and start providing transparently this pay information, that will have an effect on the whole market. And also smaller companies will need to start acting upon this initiative. But what the reporting really requires, so basically what we can work from is, in most cases, Balázs will explain you in a little bit, it's only the EU directive, and each member state country will need to implement into their own legislation. So we don't yet know in all the countries what this legislation or how this legislation will change from country to country. But basically, what the EU directive says is that companies will need to do reporting based on gender gap, based on the ratios of the gender in the different pay quartiles, and also the reporting will need to focus on the base salary and also the variable component of the salary. So when somebody says that it's easy, we will just move everything to bonuses, that's not going to help you in the long run, because you will need to report on both, or actually the complete package of the pay. What is important to note that even though the regulation states that this gender pay gap should not exceed 5 percentage points, you can also start an objective reason-based justification for the individual. So you can explain that this person has been working on our most critical project and have somehow explained that this gender pay gap exceeds the 5% for that individual. And the regulation has two sides, one for the current employees and the other side for the future employees. Start with the future potential employees. What is really important is that for every job advertisement, by the time the applicant comes to the interview, they must know the salary range. So either you tell them over the phone or you put it in the advertisement, but the person must know the salary range. All the advertisement job titles need to be gender neutral, And also you will be forbidden to ask the potential employee or the candidate about their current earnings. For your existing employees, what is really important, this right to know. So they have the right to know where they stand in their salary range. Also, they must be provided within 2 months of request this information. So once we get to the projects, we will highlight that it is important that you can do this data, or you can make this data request as automatic as possible and not do it, not add an additional manual labor work to your HR team. It's also very important that you cannot forbid the employees to talk to each other about their current salaries. It differs from country to country. In some countries, it is the way of working that is part of their contract, that they cannot talk about their salary to each other. So this will be forbidden in the future. Also, it is very important that they understand how they can be promoted and what they need to do to reach the next level in their career, and also that these steps are clearly explained to them. Also, if the pay gap exceeds 5%, this joint pay assessment that I already mentioned is something that you will need to introduce to your HR processes. And last but not least, what is very important, if an employee raises any issues or pay transparency gaps that he sees, they cannot be disadvantaged in the future, which is easier said than done, but this is what the regulation says.
The preparedness of the EU Pay Transparency Directive is different country by country. This map shows what was the 2025 ends year progression of the implementation of the directive. And of course, there are some countries who are flagships on this topic. For example, the northern country or Belgium, who already implemented some of the versions earlier based on the 2023 recommendations, for example. In every country, they have to implement their own version of the directive, and it can be stricter than the EU directive as well. We can see signs of that in the northern countries. For example, some Scandinavian country, they have to do like yearly reporting if your company is more than 50 people, for example. There are several types of system they are implementing. Some countries implement like certificate-based system. There are some institutes who can give you that after an audit, but some people have like a central agency or central institute who are obligatory to do the reporting to do that institute. And for example, in France, there is a system for 100 points, and you need to do different actions if you just reach 70 or 80. So a few of the countries who already implemented some of these requirements, they are actually changing the versions of that regulations to be met with the EU Transparency Directive. However, some countries are like behind. For example, we here in Hungary or in Romania, the draft version is not ready yet. So for that reason, companies has a little bit of trouble to understand how do they should prepare for these changes. And this is where we actually come into in this topic, because there are several preparedness practice you can do without knowing the actual really detailed full regulations of your country. In summarize these initiative, we know that the regulation will enter force in this June, and every company and every country has to be ready to meet these obligations. A few of the countries don't know really the details, but some of them are in the phase when they know how to prepare this. The regulation aims to have equal pay for equal work. They want to create transparent pay and career paths. and give access, information for everybody who needs it. It tries to reach these aims through reporting system and to obligate every country to have like one institute who gathers this reporting and figure out a fine system, for example. And all of the countries have to abide of these regulation details as well. We know that it will come in this year. We know that the reporting should be done by next year in summertime. And we know that it will change the HR relations and the labor market in several topics, and we try to prepare for those.
So first time we spoke about this regulation among us in one of our AIMS meetings. Our colleagues across Germany, Spain were very. Their first reactions were very, very strong, and they were not sure which way the regulator wanted to go with this. And also, after speaking to some of our clients, we just collected what the most common responses were. So really, their concern was about fairness. Many times you try to find someone from the market. You need to offer them a higher salary than you have with the people that are already working at your company. How will the companies be able to handle this situation? Also, employee reactions. If, as Balázs explained, you will start to report 27 June, but if your employees will see that, oh, now I get a 10% raise, and then they understand, okay, this raise is because I was not paid enough so far. Their reactions might be very hostile, and also you're raising their salary, but on the other end, their satisfaction level will just drop. If all the companies, your competition, is showing their pay structure or pay levels, that can lead to your competitiveness dropping if your pay levels are lower than your competition. So it means a cost pressure on the company. And also, this puts a very, very big challenge on your management, how they will be able to explain the people what really this pay transparency means, and that they cannot just request that I want to see the financial figures of the CEO, but how this whole regulation can be transformed into a workable solution. So really, this whole thing we'll show you in a second, but it comes down to how we handle our stuff, how we handle people, because this is a very crucial topic for the year to come. And as Andrea explained to you in the beginning, we'll deep dive a little bit on our framework on pay transparency, and I believe on this topic we shall spend about 20 to 30 minutes, and afterwards we will answer all your questions. But so far was the part where we gave you the details about the regulation, and now we will speak to how we think this can be implemented. So we see that there are four very important sections or solution parts for an end-to-end solution. One is HR, obviously. It's a very strong, if not mostly HR relevant topic. You will need to do the assessment of the current pay structure, salary bands creation, but this whole topic doesn't just stop at HR, because as I mentioned, this will also rely heavily on your internal communication. So change management and communication comes in crucial. You will need to start early with this so that you can put a better story behind the whole process for the company, and you can come away as a leader and not somebody that only does the changes because you need to comply. Also technology, reporting, as Balázs mentioned. So you will need to do two sides of reporting. I will show in a second, internally and also to the regulator. and understanding the legal background of it, you will need to rely on your in-house legal team to really understand the local regulation. As Balázs mentioned, it will differ from country to country, although the main body of the regulation will be the same. So how the project looks like, I give you a second to just internalize what you see. I know there are a lot of data on it. Well, let me just walk you through the main things. So first thing that you might notice is the length. So we put this 6+ months. So if you consider that the regulation will come into effect in June this year, we're already behind. Obviously, it depends on your level of maturity, how well you're already prepared. In some cases, some industries, for example, pharmaceuticals, are already really advanced in this topic. DACH region pharmaceutical companies, they are on forefront. They've been doing this for years. So for them, this might not be such a huge change. In other industries or companies, this might be a bigger change. But really, you will need to start as step one, a maturity assessment. I will give you details in a second. Then do a detailed pay transparency audit that will give you the whole scope and length and all the depth of your project. So within a month, you would be able to provide the whole project and see how detailed the project is, how much change it needs in your organization. Step 3 and 4, Andrea will explain, but really you will need to deep dive in each job, and you will need to create the pay bands, possibly do some salary increases to match the regulations requirements. Change management, as I mentioned, this is very crucial. So you will need to start early with this step. In many cases, we advise that you start with this and you start with trainings for your management, so they understand what they can tell their people, and so you don't run into awkward situations. Then step 6, the legal process. As mentioned, you will need to review your contracting, but we'll deep dive into that. And the last part will be the reporting. Obviously, as Balázs mentioned, this is the part where you will really need to have the regulation implemented locally. But for the first 4 steps, that's something that you can do without the local regulation in place, because that's just something that will raise your HR maturity to the next level. And once the regulation is in place, you will just benefit from not having to do a very long process. So going into to each phase of the project, basically, as mentioned, we have this very quick assessment. Wouldn't take you more than 5 to 10 minutes. It's a couple questions, 10 to 15 questions, where we understand your maturity and can provide a very quick assessment and the key focus points for your project. But this is really high level. Then once you decide that you want to do a full-fledged project and really want to prepare your organization for pay transparency, we suggest you do this audit. That is very similar to any type of audit. So we have a pre-planned questionnaire, doing some deep dive interviews, and after this audit project, basically you would be able to do the whole project and understand the scope of your project and where your focus points will need to be. After that, we move over to the step 3 and 4 with Andrea.
Yes. So what does job evaluation and classification mean? It means that you attach a formal value to the work done by each role in the organization. And the objective is to evaluate the roles in order to determine their relative value and structure. So you can group them in job families and on levels, because you are not going to generate pay structure for each role, but for various levels. And this means that the key activities are introducing the job evaluation methodology, and there are several methodologies that can be used. We in AIMS use the factor comparison methodology, and I will go into a couple of details immediately. Then the next step is reviewing the job levels and career path that employees have in the company. Then fact-based assessment of roles and responsibilities, and the classification into job families and levels. This step is important because without the job evaluation and classification, it's very difficult to create salary structure and refine the salary bands. Point 4 in our approach is pay bands adjustment and salary increase planning, should there be the case. Refined salary bands and transparency framework for fair and sustainable pay decision is an important step in order to align with the directive. And here the activities means we design salary band, we analyze if there are any gaps. Maybe there are not that many. We hope so. We keep our fingers crossed. But our experience shows that appearance is very different from reality. Then there should be clear criteria for promotion and for performance evaluation. And the pay increase framework should consider the value of the work and the additional value each role brings to the organization. Now, I will not go into that many details in terms of how this works, but what is important for you to know is that there are several steps to be taken. We have to analyze the job descriptions, to review and provide feedback and recommendations should the job descriptions be not aligned with the directive. Then we evaluate each role, each individual role in the organization using the factor comparison method. We design the salary grid, and there are two additional steps that each company can take. The first one, the external pay equity analysis is not mandatory, but we encourage you to use it because if you have roles that are unique in the organization, having an external pay equity helps you check the level on the market. And then the internal pay equity, which of course provides information about the internal gender pay gap in the organization. I've mentioned that the AIMS uses the factor comparison model, and our experience of more than 10 years of conducting such job evaluation projects show that we need to use various factors and criteria for different types of workers. Our model involves standardized analysis of all positions within the organization. We group the sub-factors into main factors, and the positions are categorized into 4 career paths. Of course, these career paths are not carved in stone, but they define the 4 types of employees that a company can have. Industrial worker, individual contributor, management, and project management. And for each career path, there are different sub-factors to be used. And a score is assigned to each criteria to determine the relative value of each position. This way, we ensure that we evaluate the role, the work and not the persons that are hired on a specific role. This is the standard method to ensure the work is evaluated and not the competencies of the owner of each position in the organization. Next step is then change management and communication plan, and I'll hand over to Balázs.
The change is unavoidable. We strongly suggest that be proactive on this topic. So in 2026, we think there is a possibility for companies to take the lead on that and try to differentiate themselves from the competitors on these topics. So when we thinking about that, how we communicate internal the company or external to the labor market, it could be a point where really a company can differentiate themselves to be transparent on this topic. So we try to focusing on this attitude. For example, in change management, it's really important that every leaders be on the same side and understand that what kind of communications or what kind of questions they have to or must answer based on the new regulations, and what is not intended to be answered. For example, like personal base, or it should be just an average. So there will be a lot of discussion among the employees that in specific salaries as well, and it should be allowed now. And it's a change in a lot of countries, a lot of companies. For this reason, we really strongly suggest that it should be like some preparation on the C-level as well. And of course, in every level of leaders of the company, just to be on the same side, create platforms when they can discuss these topics and be proactive on that, not wait for your employees to ask those questions. And we are focusing on the communication plan as well. If it's for the labor market, that how you will put your salaries into in your hiring process, and where or when will it be like transparent, because you could do it before the implementation of these regulations as well. So it will count in the end. Like there is a possibility to be more transparent in the labor market. And of course, the internal communications, the platforms, the leadership communication should be take considerations as well and prepare for all of these changes in your company. The next part is legal and legislation, what is crucial on this topic, but we really want to emphasize here that every country will be different details about this. So we have representatives as aims in different countries, and we know that there are several similarities between these regulations, and that's where we can help. We have expertise how review on employment contracts or update the initial guidelines or policies, and how this should be implemented in the timeline after these regulations enter into force. This is a topic where we think that legal, business and HR, so also departments has to work together. Really, it's a cooperation, and it will be better if you take this. Every company will start with like reviewing the details of the regulation of their countries, of course, but the legal side could be as well in the change management side, that it's better if you are proactive in this part as well, and we can help with the similarities. The next part is the reporting. As we mentioned, that every company, based on their size, they have to make reports in a specific entities, or it will be decentralized, and you can add in several entities. So it will be based on the country regulation, of course. But if somebody has questions about salaries and average salaries and the requirements we mentioned about, then the company has to be able to answer this question within 2 months. And for that reason, it's really important that the company has like a system. It could be like an HR tool, it could be a lot of Excels, but be able to answer these questions within a time frame. And this is where we jump in. We think if in a bigger company has to be like some HR salary modules or payroll IT systems where it should be like aligned with these regulations, and some IT developments are needed in the future. And the external reporting will differ country per country. And sometimes it will like you have to upload data to somewhere. It will look like you have to send it somewhere or different entities, etc. But in the end, the first year is always really bumpy to be said because this is always a first. And in this period, it could cause like a really lot of resource from the company, not just from HR, but other department, for example. So it's easier to be prepared on these topics. And we think that it's really worth to just make some systems of governance, how you will develop these data, what is required based on the new initiative.
Thanks, Balázs and Andrea, for the details. Basically, our walkaway is that, as Balázs mentioned, you start early. First 4 steps or stages, you cannot make a mistake there. So even if the regulation is delayed or locally changes, then with the first 4 steps, you will be prepared whatever comes to you, and your reputation as a company will be just raised. And going back to Andrea's story in the very beginning, how different female and male or men or women look at applications. We believe that building trust first and foremost through transparency, what will help, courage. So if you're leading your industry or you're in the first responders, that will also raise courage within the company, and it will raise the satisfaction of your people and perception. So if you do own the lens and you frame the future and you're not just a follower, that will help you build a very strong case for your pay transparency compliance, and the people within the organization will not feel it as a compliance, rather as a strong performance from management. And with that, I believe I hand over to our Q&A session. And I saw that there were some questions already while we were discussing the topic. So I will stop the presentation and start with the questions.
Okay, so do you see the questions, Dénes, or do you want me to read them out loud?
Well, I got them here on the side, so thank you, Kerstin. So first one, I believe, goes to Andrea. So if the showed KPIs are valid for all European countries?
The first data is for Romania. But our experience in working with our AIMS international partners shows that the data in terms of representation is not that different. Maybe the individual parameters for each country might differ, but the representation gap holds across the world, actually, not only across Europe.
Thank you. If any further questions to this, just feel free to add. The next one, if we could clarify if pay gaps should be addressed at a global company level or only at the legal entity level. So I can take that. Basically, it needs to be taken on country level. But if the country has, if it's a group of companies, then it applies to the group and not only on the individual company.
Yes.
If we know exactly which parameters are needed to be compliant for smaller companies besides the exclusion of reporting.
All parameters.
What?
The small companies just don't need to report. They will report on voluntary basis, but they still have to obey the pay gap and explain to employees which are the criteria for the salary bands and the rest of the information from the directive applies to every company, no matter how small or big. It's just the reporting that will not be mandatory for smaller companies.
Yes, I believe this is a very, very strong misunderstanding that it's only the reporting, but the whole regulation applies to smaller companies as well, and they need to be compliant. Sorry, Balázs, you were here.
It actually depends on the country as well, because if the regulation is stricter, and I know there are some northern country where it's under 50 people size companies, they still have to do the reporting part as well. So it could be the case depending on the countries. But in general, yes, the reporting part is usually within parameters, and every other parameter is for every country and every company.
The next one, Andrea, how is the pay gap exactly calculated? Does the EU directive define that?
The pay gap is the question. I'm not sure if I understand the question, if the pay gap refers to the pay gap as per the EU directive or the pay gap that I have presented. If it applies to the EU directive,
Yes.
then if you have let's say sales representative position and you have 10 employees, you have to calculate the average salary for the female employees, the average salary for the male employees, and if there is a gap, that's the pay gap. It's if it's higher than 5% in favor of male employees, then you are not compliant with the regulation. If it's below 5%, then you are compliant. One thing, though, that I would like to mention is that the directive is a little bit confusing, because even if it starts at the beginning in talking about pay gap in terms of gender, at the end of the directive, the word gender disappears from the directive. So it can even be applied to calculating gaps of persons of the same gender. So if you have an employee that feels that he's underpaid for the role he's doing, you have to have a very clear explanation towards why his total income is more than 5% lower than that of another peer on a similar position. And that's why the job evaluation part of such a project of complying with the directive is important, because it helps every company clarify what value each role has, and then you can build the salary system accordingly.
I believe this next one connects to this. So if there are only a few employees on different positions with no salary range, how can we treat this? This is the very last in the list.
Oh, okay. If and with no salary range, how? Well, you have to define a salary range. That's the first thing, to define a salary range. Even if you only have one employee per position, you still have to define a salary range, because that employee might leave and somebody else will come. And when somebody else comes, you might not pay that new employee with exactly the same amount as the previous one. So even if you have one job holder per position, you still need to have a salary range defined.
Also for the ranges and the different countries. So do we need to have salary bands for each country individually, or one set of bands for all locations?
My understanding is that there have to be salary bands for each country because there are differences in legislation, there are differences in the cost of living, and the cost of living can be a differentiator that explains why an employee from, I don't know, Paris is paid differently from an employee from Timișoara, Romania. So it should be for each country.
Also connecting to this, I see that people love this topic. So how the criteria for differentiating IT positions will be established, how this differentiation is affected by the market for similar technologies such as C++, .NET, and if this could be used as a calculation formula.
Yes, if an employee or we are not talking about employees, we are talking about roles. And I should emphasize that if a role specifies a certain technology which is scarce on the market or which requires more training in order to be proficient in that specific technology, that can be a differentiator for the salary that or the income of that specific role. But I couldn't provide a fair formula because it's very specific depending on the roles.
Okay,
This is answered through the job evaluation step from our approach. In the job evaluation, all these criteria must be included, are factors for evaluating a position.
So next one is tricky. So if we apply the 5% gap regardless of gender on the same salary band, can we assume that we need to have variance on the salary band below 5%? So here I believe the answer is yes, unless you have a very small number of team members or salary band members, and one or two people, you rather do this the special treatment and explain why they are out of the salary band. But that's my take. Andrea, what do you think?
Yes, actually, any salary band should have a band width, and that width it can be for lower hierarchical positions of 15-20%, but the higher you go in terms of responsibility within the company, that how wide the salary band is, can grow up to 50%, which means that for higher responsibility positions, it is sometimes usual to have bigger differences in income because the output for those roles is different. What the directive says is that you have to explain those differences, not that you cannot have them, but you have to have objective criteria when there are these differences. So you can have even a bigger band than 5%. You can even have a, I don't know, 30% band width for a specific level or for a specific role.
Okay, next one. What the joint pay assessment means. So basically, this is where you explain why this difference is above 5%. And the next one, I know that Balázs loves this topic, so let me relay this to you. So, yeah, true. So you mentioned that the reporting will be done on variable pay as well, the bonuses. Will there need to be a justification for those as well in reporting? Where is this question?
Yeah, the regulation actually doesn't require to report on bonuses, but on the total income. So if your total income varies widely, then you have to explain why it varies. so widely. Which doesn't mean that persons with different performance levels don't have different incomes, but having a clear performance review system and performance indicators and then performance-related bonuses is the explanation to why there is that gap in remuneration.
I believe we are running out of time, but there are some more very important topics. So the last one from Kinga: with this new requirement in place, does salary confidentiality still apply? Is it okay for an employer to ask employees by contract to keep salaries confidential? So Balázs, legal.
They can discuss this information with each other, and the managers and companies do not have the right to stop these kind of conversations. Employees can ask on average and not specific people's salaries, but in a group of the same value work groups of salary ranges, of course.
And to answer specifically to the question of Kinga, hello Kinga, is all mentions that salaries must be kept confidential, must be stripped from the contracts. So it will be illegal to mention that the salary is confidential.
Yes, there was a question regarding audit. So in some countries, Balázs.
Yes, some countries called it audit. For example, in Spain, they have like requirements for these kind of audits as well. So pay cap audits require to justify the differences using objective criteria. But for example, in France, there is like a point index yearly. You have to make that, and based on that, you will get your score. And based on that, you have to do different actions. In Iceland, for example, there are external auditors who do this because the country implemented this regulation in a decentralized way, and there's not just one institute that it's gathered together all of these requirements. So to be answered that question is need to which country we are talking about, that yes, audits are usually the part of the system implementations, yes.
And maybe a final question from Ramona, Andrea. How we treat the managers? They all have manager roles, have the same level, but the job description is different. We analyze them together or one by one?
Well, that's something that we do in the job evaluation phase of such a project. And some managers might be in the same level, others might be in different levels. It really depends on how the processes of the company look like, and you will provide data about the level and not about the specific role. If you have only one person on a specific role, that information cannot be shared with somebody who wants to be promoted or to apply for that specific position. And that is something that the levels help companies with. You provide data on the level and not on the role.
Yes, so there is some argument from Madalina that the Romanian labor code states otherwise, but this is what we mentioned, that every EU member state must comply by June with this regulation.
It will be changed when the directive will be mandatory in Romania as well.
Yes, and I know I said final question. I always do this with my 3-year-old, that he always gets another and another question. But basically, job advertisements to be gender neutral, it means that you cannot state in the job advertisement that this relates to a male or a female employee.
And also for the countries where adjectives like, I don't know, empathetic or communicator or all these things that you attach to a specific role are gender sensitive, you have to make sure that the person that reads the ad doesn't understand implicitly that you are looking for a male or for a female. This applies to Romanian, for instance, and I know for sure that it doesn't apply for Hungarian because the language has a different topic. But for those countries where these things are gender sensitive, we have to get more creative when designing the job advertisements in order to make it to make sure that the ads are gender neutral and not with some hidden meaning somewhere, which will be a challenge, but I think it might be interesting in the future to see how the job advertisement industry will change.
So I believe that we got to the end of the questions. So unless there are any more questions, maybe send directly to someone. Then I believe we are ready to finish. If you have any questions in the future, feel free to reach out to any of us or directly to your local AIMS partner. And we will share the deck as I learned from JD. And we think that the time to start preparing is now, as it was mentioned earlier. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for joining us and for all your questions. They helped us clarify things, and we are here to further explain whatever is of interest for any of you.
And we want to thank you, the three of you, for giving us such a good insight in this topic. Thank you.
Welcome to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.